Season 1, Episode 6, Hourglass. Okay, guys, there's weird stuff happening in this episode. There's important stuff happening here, too. I think I'm probably going to have to split this one into 2 videos. We'll see if I can keep it down short enough. First, I want to address a few important conversations that happened in this episode and how that relates to the character arcs that we're following. And then I got a few little side notes. And then, which probably will end up being a separate video, we're going to address the whole Cassandra and her visions situation. And lastly, there is weirdness in this episode that is leaking into the real world. And I'm going to show you where. I can't explain why. I'm throwing it out there on the internet for you to help me explain why. I don't know why the weirdness, the Smallville bizarreness is leaking into the real world, but it is. We could think about it together. Okay, so there's an important conversation between Lana and Clark. When Clark goes to the torch, he's looking for Chloe, and he ends up finding Lana there, and she has discovered the Wall of Weird. And she's bothered because she found her picture up there from Time magazine as a little girl, up there next to the three-headed cow and some monster. Smallville's Nessie, Lock Crater monster. Lana reminds Clark about something he had said about how people keep their darkest secrets hidden. And she says, mine's out there for the whole world to see. It's hard when people know your tragedy. They treat you differently, like you're going to break. And I first want to point out, this is actually something she and Lex have in common that she and Clark do not. Clark doesn't understand this. Clark's biggest secret is hidden. He keeps it secret for a very long time. And when he does reveal it, he does it voluntarily. Nobody rips it out of him. He voluntarily reveals it to people. But both Lana and Lex, obviously they both still have some secrets that come out as the series progresses. But one really big, we'll call it a dark secret, that's not actually a secret. For her, it has to do with this tragedy of how her parents died in the meteor shower. She's the little girl in the fairy princess costume on the cover of Time. And for Lex, he's a Luthor. He's his father's son. And Lana says to Clark, maybe I should just accept my destiny. All I'm ever going to be is a little girl in a fairy princess costume who lost her parents. She feels like there's, as much as she wants to get away from that image of her that people have got cemented in their brain, that, by the way, has nothing to do with them personally, has nothing to do with Lana personally. They don't know her personally, but they have this mental image of her from this image, the public thing in Time magazine, that's firmly cemented in their minds. So now even when they encounter her in real life, they're treating her like the fairy princess girl, the little oh, she's so fragile and innocent and cute and small. And it's that's not who she is. They're not even bothering to get to know her personally. They're just looking at and remembering that image and projecting that onto her. And she can't get away from that. Lex has the same problem. They run into Lex and all they see is Luthor in big glowing letters. That's it. And no matter how much he wants to try and run from it, he can't get away from this. He's his father's son, right? He's a Luthor. And that image they're projecting onto him has nothing to do with him personally. It's not about their interactions with Lex. It has to do with interactions they had with Lino, or for most people, it's just the public image. It's the public reputation. It's whatever his family name has already created for him that he was just born into. And it was totally not his fault and nothing to do with him, nothing to do with his own choices, nothing to do with him personally. But they keep projecting that onto him. So now, no matter how much he wants to try and distance himself from this projection, from this impression everybody has of the Luthors, he can't get away from it. And most people throughout the series, that's all they see. You're a Luthor. And they treat him like Luthor, this abstract thing, this monster that's not a real person. It's an abstract thing that they hate. She and Lex both have that problem. They both would understand this. Clark would not. Clark has not experienced this. So anyways, she says that to Clark, and Clark says, I don't see you that way, Lana. And Lana says, I know, you're the only one who doesn't. First of all, Clark is just blabbering. I know, I'm sure, there are people out there who think that saying something, if they just say it and they want it to be true, somehow it is true. Really important concept in the show, in real life. Your actions speak louder than words, okay? If you want to see what a person really thinks of you, pay attention to how they treat you, how they talk about you, how they treat you behind your back, how they treat you to your face, okay? It is a lot less about what they say, So if somebody tells you, of course I love and respect you, but if you look at their behavior and they don't love and respect you, The answer is that they don't love and respect you, okay? The number of times I've had this conversation with people who by nature tend to be a little less than rational, that's my delicate way of describing it, and they say, of course I love so-and-so, and I say, no, you clearly don't because X, Y, and Z. Here's what you did here. Here's what you did. This is how you're consistently in the habit of treating them. And they say, what? How can you say that I hate them? I don't. I love and respect them. And I think, what do you mean, how can I say it? I just explained it to you because X, Y, and Z, because you did this and you did this and you're in the habit of doing this. That's how I know. You can say over and over again, and you can tell yourself over and over again, this is what this is how I see you. This is how I feel about you. But the real truth comes out in your consistent behavior towards this person. So, do I think Clark believes that he doesn't see Lana as a fragile little girl? Yeah, I think he believes it when he says it. But he's wrong. He's lying to himself. He's gaslighting himself. The truth is, Clark absolutely sees her as something small and innocent and fragile. Way too fragile to trust with, like, adult information. He does trust other people with important information about him. He doesn't trust Lana, though. He thinks that's too heavy of a burden for her. Apparently, it's not too heavy of a burden for Pete later. I'm going to do a whole video on that. That made me so mad. But for Lana, too heavy. She's fragile. She might break. So literally, after this conversation that they have that I'm talking about now, the very next scene is Chloe and Pete showing up to investigate this guy. Okay, this guy, by the way, Harry Volk, that Lana had the major interaction with. Lana's the one that lost him at the beginning. Lana absolutely is going to be interested in this case. And Chloe's like, so is Lana joining us? And Clark's like, no, I think she's had enough weirdness for one day. Excuse me? You're not even going to give her the opportunity to join into this? You've decided she can't handle anymore. You've decided this is too much for her. She needs a break. Guys, you got to lay off Lana. She needs a break. She needs to go sit in the corner and rest. That poor little girl. We're seeing in his behavior, Clark sees her as the little girl on Time magazine. Clark sees her as weak and fragile. Clark sees her as something too childish to trust and rely on and treat like an adult. And then later in the episode, Lana loses Harry again. She comes to the torch, says he disappeared again. I don't know what happened. Clark says how he saw the meteor rocks in the water there that was near that wooden walkway. And Chloe's like, oh, well, at least we know how he did the time warp. And Lana's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And instead of taking like 2 seconds to just explain to her what's going on, Clark just totally brushes her off. He's like, oh, I'll explain later. And then he and Chloe and Pete go on talking about the situation like she's like a little kid in the corner. Like, now, dear. Not right now, dear. The adults are talking. You know, you go sit over there. We'll take care of this. I can't explain it to you. I'll explain it to you later. And by the way, Clark doesn't explain it to her later. So clearly, we see in his consistent habitual behavior, Clark does not see Lana as something strong or reliable. He sees her as something that is weak and fragile and small. The character who demonstrates that he sees Lana as something beyond the fragile little girl on Time magazine is Lex, not Clark. Lex demonstrates that he sees strength in her. He encourages her to make her own decisions, to break out of the mold of expectations, to learn how to defend herself. He personally and actively supports her in these things. And by the way, Lex is doing this without any expectations of romance. Clark's not doing that. Clark likes his fragile little damsel in distress. He likes having her up on his shelf so he can rescue her and have her melt in his arms whenever he's in the mood, and then put her back and know she's waiting for him. Lex does not treat her that way. Lex actually treats her with love and respect. Clark does not. So who actually loves Lana? So then the question becomes, why does Lana think that Clark sees her differently? This is actually another point of comparison between Lex and Lana. They both have Clark up on a pedestal. They both have a more positive impression of him than he deserves. They're not seeing that he doesn't actually love or respect either one of them. They keep telling themselves that he's my friend, he loves and respects me, and he doesn't. But why are they doing that? Because they don't have anybody else. They need somebody to see them for who they really are. They need somebody to understand them, to be compassionate. And they've decided Clark is that person. He's not, but they've decided he is. And it's causing them to have that emotional need is causing them to not see the uncomfortable truth that Clark is not that person for either of them. Clark ends up trusting Cassandra to see his future, knowing darn well she might see something about his secret. Significance of that is that Clark is not following some kind of a rule where he doesn't reveal his secret, when he refuses to trust people like Lex and Lana. When he chooses not to tell Lex, Lana, Chloe, etc., he's making a deliberate choice. He's not trusting them because he doesn't want to trust them, not because he has some rule to follow. There are plenty of people he chooses to trust. He chooses freely not to trust specific people. I like that Lex brought a flower and then a bouquet of flowers the second time when he went to talk to Cassandra. Very classy. That lady, too, she was classy, too. She was so elegant. Clark sneaks into an old guy's room and searches through his personal stuff. Clark lies to Cassandra later and tries to tell her he's just like everybody else, which, by the way, that was a stupid lie. Not only was it a lie, it was a dumb lie, because, seriously, he doesn't think that she might be able to see something weird about him. Whatever. Lex shows Clark the Porsche that he kept. Clark lies and gaslights Lex again. And in this, I've kind of already touched on this, but like, Clark has no empathy for Lex at all. Lex keeps trying in this series. He keeps trying over and over again to like reach out to Clark and say, dude, like, understand this was important. This whole event was important for me. It held great significance in my life. But like, Clark is stuck in his world is small. His view is small. His existence is all about himself. He's consumed with this self-obsession where like he doesn't see Clark has this weakness. He struggles to see other people as their own people. He really struggles with empathy. So whenever Lex is talking about investigating this event, it's like Clark cannot see this as having to do with Lex. He only sees it as having to do with himself, as though Lex investigating this is a personal attack against himself, rather than recognizing that Lex is investigating something that had to do with him and his life. Something that was important and life-changing for him. There's just no empathy from Clark. Another Lana-Lex parallel. We already talked about how Lex notices things and doesn't always react, but it's clear he's paying attention and notices stuff and logs the information away for later. Lana does too. And I mentioned one of those with the telescope in one of my other videos. But when Lana and Clark are out on the walkway over the Meteor Rock Pond, Lana notices Clark acting weird around the meteor rocks, just like Lex does. Like, honestly, you could line up scenes and it'd be like a perfect parallel where they're out together talking. Lex and Clark in another episode, and Lana and Clark in this episode. The meteor rock starts having its impact on Clark. He starts acting uncomfortable. They notice, and they're like, hey, man, you good? Clark, you okay? And then Clark's like, nah, and backs away and whatever, and then like gets away from the situation. And then you just see them, Lex or Lana, looking curiously at him, looking at the rock, thinking about things. Not reacting, not saying anything, but noticing. But Lana does in this one too. Also, by the way, Lana's wearing purple again. Purple shirt, purple flowers in her hair. We know they're doing the clothes colors intentionally in the show. We already know. They've already shown that. They're putting, Clark in the red and blue and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, Lana's wearing purple a lot. Also, in that scene where Clark and Lana are on the wooden walkway and they show it's not a koi pond. I don't know, what are those fish? Catfish? I don't know what they are. I feel like when they show us the fish swimming around the rocks and they make that weird glowy noise or whatever, the sparkly noise that they do with the kryptonite. I'm expecting them to cut back and then all of a sudden you see like off in the distance like a giant fish come swimming toward them or like jump out of the water all of a sudden.